Okay, the design's really starting to take shape here. You can kind of see that it is better balanced, but it's not fully there yet. And my objective always is balance. So, but at this point, I think it's time to go ahead and get the thing kind of locked into place. So what I'm going to do is pick up the stone, and let's turn this sideways. Drop the stone on there. Drop the first leaf on there. Second leaf goes on. We'll slide everything down a ways. There we go. So that will give us the basic shape of the backing. And the backing is going to back the stone and then also back the two leaves so that it's good and strong. So basically at this point just kind of come in and draw a circle around that. Leaving a lot of space so that we don't end up with not enough room. So, okay, take that off. Cut this. And I'm using 24 gauge for the back of this, which is plenty strong. It'll give it some good strength and also allow me to throw a really nice clean polish on the back so that it looks really good. Alright, so we got that. Now we can go ahead and set it up on the charcoal block. And we'll put it there. Basically take the stone out. We're going to go ahead and drop all the pieces in place, somewhat in place at least. And then we got to come in and do some, put some flux on there and get things kind of set up and ready to go. So we'll go over to the welding table. Oh, look, put the little leaf on there, or the little flower on there. We'll go over to the welding table now and go ahead and set this up and be back in a second. And I have my flux in a jar, so that if whatever spills out doesn't get outside here, and because this stuff kind of gets all over the place and just makes a big mess. So basically I just take a little flux and we go in behind the jar here and rub it on the piece itself, or on the backing plate, until it's fully covered. And that's probably good enough right there. And then put the design on. And we're going to need a pair of tweezers for this. Do I have a pair? Yes. Drop that part in place. Let's rotate that a bit. Drop this part in place. Yeah, that looks pretty good. That leaves a little bit of room to put the flower when we get the flower done. And let's go ahead and, you know, I think I better pre-polish this flower, because once that piece gets in there, I'm not going to be able to get down in there. So I'm going to take this back and pre-polish it a little bit. Okay, so now just a little bit of flux right in the center of that, and let's drop the dot right in the middle of that. And I think we are ready to go. Crank up our torch. And let's get right down. So in this case, I've already put hard solder. And hard solder and medium solder and easy solder are the way you get solders these days. Oh, there's medium. No, that's hard. It's been a while since I've used silver solder, so I don't know what I did with it. But, here's some. Okay, and the way I know that it's hard and medium and easy solder is I bend the easy solder one time, and I bend the medium solder 2 times, and I bend the hard solder, we're going to find some hard solder, I bend that 3 times. I don't know if you can see that, but yes. And that tells me what kind of solder I've got. And as I said, it's been a while since I've used silver solder, so all of my solder is kind of contaminated too. It's got a little bit of tarnish on it. So I just take a little bit of steel wool and go ahead and clean the solder so that we have a nice clean solder joint. You can see it's so nice and shiny now. So come in, I'll give it a little bit more flame. Basically, we're just going to kind of come in. Let me move this up just a little bit, just in case I want to get in below here. There we go. Just gave myself a little room down there in case I want to bring a bead in around that. And sometimes that looks really good when you do that. So heat this baby up. We're going to take it up to, probably about 1100 degrees or so. And what I do is drop a little solder in there, and that way it doesn't affect the design. I drop it in, as you saw, way before the design. And then out here, drop it in right at the outside of the design so that it kind of works its way in rather than accidentally moving the design around. The same here. Oops, looks like I'm running out of solder, so I need to unfold myself a little more and then clean it. And since I've got kind of heated it and let it cool a little bit, I oftentimes like to put just a little bit more flux in the places that I haven't soldered yet, because sometimes the flux will burn off. Alright, so now we have fresh flux. We'll take it back up to temperature. There we go. And just put a little solder right in there and bring that whole thing up to temperature, and that solder will flow all the way around. There we go. Come on. So a little bit more right in here, because I saw that that was a little bit weak. And I think we got everything set. Oh, yeah, let's do the flower since we're here. Sorry, I banged you there. We'll kind of move this over into the flower area. Into the center of the flower. Just a little bit of solder, and this solder I just drop right on top of that little nodule, and it'll flow around. Oh, there it goes. Okay, cap back on because this stuff evaporates pretty quickly. We will pick up the piece that's still pretty hot and drop it in the water. Same with the flower. And time to take it back over and start trimming it. And of course now it's very ugly looking, but it's got potential. And you know what? I think I am going to put just a little bead of silver right around this little edge here, because it always gives it a little bit more substance, and it looks like it's, I don't know, just a little bit, what would the word be, stronger. So maybe just well, actually that's a little bit, get something a little bit smaller. Just digging around in my scrap bin here, and it looks like this is all I have in this particular size, and it's just a little bit big. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this down to size. And one of the advantages of having a full shop, you know, after 35 years you got all the tools, is we sharpen the tip here and take it out to the vise and pull it through a draw plate, and that'll make the metal smaller in diameter and also longer, because of course the metal has to go somewhere when you're stretching it out that way. So just a little bit further down. Basically, a pencil sharpener probably would do well here, except of course this is metal. So we just kind of trim the surface down a little bit so that it'll fit through the draw plate and give us a nice pull. So let's go out into the shop where the vise is. So a draw plate basically is a piece of pretty high-grade steel with a bunch of holes in it. Now, each of these holes has a taper to it, so that when you come in from the back, it has it's kind of like a reverse cone, you might say. So I just basically come in with the metal and poke it through a hole until I can get it to a point where I can't poke it through a hole. And that looks like that's about it right there. So then put it in the vise and grab it with my special pair of tongs and pull it through the hole. Now that one pulled through pretty easy, so I think that was probably the size it was. So we're going to go ahead and slide it into the next smaller hole and pull it. And that pulled through hard, nice and hard, so we got it to go down a little bit. And we're going to pull it again. And I want to go one more. Now with silver, you could just pull this all day long and just keep pulling the silver down. Notice how that we've probably added about 3 inches to that piece of metal. Now that looks like a pretty good size to me. So we're going to go back in and see how it works. Okay, let's see what we've got here. Yeah, much better size. It kind of balances with the piece now, rather than being overpowering the piece. So now, basically, I'm just going to take and bend this until it gets to a place where it's shaped about the same as the piece itself. And that's kind of moving in that direction. Yeah, that's better. So we're just bending it around till we get it to fall into place here. Almost. Gets a little bit critical as you go around that bend, but you know, not critical in the way that it's going to destroy anything, because you just have to work it some more. So we went around the bend, and that looks pretty good, but we got to, you know, grab it right here and bend it a little bit more. Just continuing to bend this until it fits that piece. And you know, this kind of stuff, oh, look at that. This kind of stuff takes Takes a little extra time, but boy, in the end result, it looks so much better. Let me go ahead and cut this piece of scrap off. We're going to cut it a little bit long. Yeah, that looks good. Now, we come in and cut it at an angle, and it may lay in there just about right. I'm going to cut it at a fairly steep angle here. And look at that. We've laid in on top of that leaf just about right. Now I can see that I need to pull that in just a little bit more. You know, getting all these angles just right is an important piece at this point, because if you try to do it later on, you just end up making a mess. That looks pretty good, but there's still just a little bit of a gap in there. I think a little bit more. Yeah, there we go. Now that looks pretty good. Alright, so now, because the bottom doesn't really match the top, doesn't really match what we're going to weld to, I always find it really important to come in and just square up that bottom a little bit with a flat file. And can't really grab it, that's the problem. So you have to just really be careful and go slowly. Let me get a finer file. Yeah, there we go. And then once it kind of comes in, you can see that I'm filing my fingers away. But you know, that's part of being a jeweler. And after a while, that skin gets pretty tough. All right, we're getting there. Come on. Yeah, so we're getting a nice flat on there. And in doing so, it meets or mates with the backing plate more evenly, and so you can get a nice solder joint without it. Whoa! Drop that baby on the ground. You can get a nice solder joint without it kind of getting ripply on you. There we go. Now let's see what that looks like. Of course, the piece is kind of a mess, as I said earlier, but you can see right down in here how it mates with this backing plate really nicely. And so once the solder goes in, for one, not very much solder has to go in, but then also once it goes in, it kind of fills that gap pretty quickly. And when you file it back, you end up with a nice, even wall. And that works really good. So I can see here, yeah, gosh, just about right. So let's take it over there and weld it. See what we come up with. Yes. Okay, so we just welded up that little bottom piece there, and that kind of adds a little bit more body to the whole piece itself. So now basically I got to come in and trim off the metal around here, which is not that difficult. And I'm leaving a little bit right here for the flower. but all the rest of it can go off. That's basically what we want to do. Now here's kind of give you an idea of where we're going. Have a look at what happens when we just file this just a little bit. You can see that silver's right underneath there, and it looks really good. So we're going to take off just the outer edges here and kind of round it up, make it look nice. And we're going to bring in that edge a little bit. And this is kind of what I was talking about with that one outer edge. Yeah, I know, fingernails on chalkboard. But after a while you get used to that sound. There we go. Now in normal situations I would just take this over to my grinder and just grind the heck out of it. But you know, hey, this is the old way of doing it, and if we're going back to my roots, which is basically what I'm doing with this piece, then, you know, we're going back to the days before I had a grinder. And all I had was a file. In fact, all I had was one file in those early days. Okay, that looks pretty good. Taking that edge up. You can see that outside edge is really starting to look nice now. And let me come in with a finer file to get this top. Oops. Okay, so we're at a kind of a stopping point because we want to come in and polish this inside edge before we put the flower on. And in order to do that, we're going to have to drop this in the acid overnight and let it kind of cook away some of that garbage. So we'll come back to this tomorrow and play with continuing the design. And I'm kind of looking at possibly making a chain for this too, but you know, I don't know quite yet. Somehow this is starting to get very exotic looking. So we'll see you tomorrow. Oh yeah, put the stone in. That helps too. We'll see you tomorrow.